As I said, let's unpack those market movements today with Wayne McCurrie from First National Bank's Wealth and Investments. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon or evening, Wayne. Let's start with that overall movement on the market today. I mentioned it in my intro that it had quite a volatile week last week, and it's the hawkish tone partly that contributed to the caution that market participants were exercising. There is some economic data out today from those global markets. What would you say were some of the other big catalysts that led to today's movements?
Look, I mean, as you correctly said, most of last week was negative, but actually picked up a little bit on Friday on the back of the US jobs numbers, which were actually not, at least it wasn't negative. It was very much as anticipated by the market, in fact, a little bit better. But today, there was some data out of China that there's actually quite a fear in China that the economy is actually in deflation. In other words, prices are physically falling. I think the government there will actually give some more stimulus and cut interest rates and put some more money into the economy, but that's what worried the market today. And the weakness that we've seen, down at 0.6%, a lot better than earlier on where it was down 1%, is really focused on mining shares and in particular the platinum shares. So those are the ones down the most, but the whole market is down today.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I suppose the price of oil that is increasing has probably got to do with those fears that are coming out of China's economic outlook. Almost $80 a barrel, currently at $78 odd a barrel. Your thoughts on the price of Brent and whether we're going to get those high prices again based on what's happening?
Look, I think Brent's stuck in the 70 to 80 range for a while still. And no matter what the OPEC and the producers do to cut production, demand is a bigger factor, and demand's not good at the moment. We've just spoken about China, but already around the world, there is fairly lackluster economic growth. So I don't think we'll see high prices this year, but certainly as interest rates are cut and the world's economy starts to improve somewhat next year, we could see those higher prices again, but not just for oil, for all commodities. But of course, if we do get those higher prices for all commodities, that's very beneficial for South Africa, and we probably see a much stronger rand sometime in next year, maybe the first half of next year. But unfortunately, until then, I think we're going to be sitting, between 18 and 19 on the rand as well.
Yeah, let's get on to some company updates, Wayne. Let's start with Mondi. They're buying a Canadian pulp mill, and this after they got rid of some of their operations in Russia, that announcement made last week. So that investment in Canada, your thoughts on what that investment is like for them and what it will give to them in terms of returns?
I think this is a very good investment for Canada. I mean, Sappi's got big operations in North America already. They've got 10 paper bag manufacturing firms, but they've got to source their raw material, which is essentially stuff called kraft pulp, essentially. And they're buying this factory for $5 million, which is nothing, but they're investing 400 million euro into it to put in a new mill to actually supply their own paper bag manufacturers with the raw input that they need to make the bags. So it'll increase their margin quite materially. It'll drop all the supply side. It's a very good integrated acquisition, I think. So what they're buying is really nothing. It's the money they're going to invest into it and what they plan to do with it.
And I suppose they find themselves in a bit of a sweet spot, Wayne, if you will, with the way that the world is moving when it comes to cutting carbon emissions and moving from plastics to paper. The North American side, pretty good with that. So one would say that for the business, it's going to mean some pretty impressive returns after a while.
I think so. And it's not the only major trend is going away from plastics. Online is only going to grow more and more. And online actually uses more packaging than just putting 300 items on one shelf in a shop. When you've got to ship 300 items individually to 300 different destinations, you use a substantial more packaging. And Mondi is quite focused in that field. So I think there's two major trends that are actually in their favor.
Yeah, let's move over to some other company updates. At Telkom on Friday, the share price fell quite dismally after the management or executives there rejected the offer that was made by the consortium led by the former CEO, Themba Maseko. Now they are coming back to say, well, they really frustrated the conversation around the takeover, and that is what is being alleged by this consortium. Your thoughts on the initial bid? Do you think it would have been good for Telkom? And really, what does the future for it look like? Because unlike the other telco providers, Wayne, it has struggled quite a bit.
Yes, yes. Look, in this game, you've got to have very, very deep pockets because technology changes the whole time. You have got to have constant network upgrades. So unless you're one of the really big players, you struggle. And that's Telkom and especially Cell C find themselves in this position. They just simply haven't got the money to keep their network up to date and very wide coverage. So to get the coverage, they've got to partner with one of the big players, and then of course you lose your margin. So it's an incredibly difficult situation. Now we all know this isn't the first bid for Telkom. There's been quite a few bids, and I wonder whether Telkom's doing the right thing by going their own way for all the reasons that I've just explained. You know, they looked at merging with Cell C years ago. Then we all know the other bids that they've had from Rain and from many other players in the market and potential partners. But I don't know whether you can actually survive as a small player in this market. But of course, management, you know, they want to keep control of the company. They want to do their plans and implement their strategy. So I suppose it's almost natural for management to reject some sort of bid like that. Of course, shareholders ultimately decide what happens, not management, not directors. So maybe people interested in Telkom will actually go directly to the shareholders and make it a hostile bid, just bypass management. You know, as I said, management doesn't decide on this, shareholders decide on this.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm wondering, as you give that answer, the one that we watched closely was MTN's potential bid of Telkom. It would have made MTN quite the conglomerate when it comes to the telco space. But that received quite a bit of pushback from the likes of yourself and your Vodacoms in terms of the competitive advantage that MTN would have had. If MTN revisited these discussions again, do you think that there would be that kind of pushback again from the other telcos, given the magnitude of the space? Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, that's what competitors do, is when they think their competition is getting a step ahead of them, they'll go to court, they'll complain, they'll make a lot of noise. I mean, that's the way it actually works. Look, when you're buying Telkom, you're actually buying legacy assets, which are in permanent decline. In fact, voice is in decline, whether it's fixed line or cell. Everyone uses data nowadays. But you do get a nice customer base in Telkom Mobile. The customer base is actually quite good. They don't make much money out of it, but the customer base is actually quite good if you want to just bolt it onto your existing infrastructure at very little additional cost to you yourself. And obviously that's why MTN was interested in it, and Rain as well. But you know, Telkom, the management there is quite adamant that they're going to do their own path, and they've got a clear strategy. I just don't know whether you can do it. I mean, you can look at Cell C, and you can chat to the management at Blue Label and ask them what they think of what it's like to operate as a small player.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Wayne. As always, thank you very much for that update. That is Wayne McCurrie from FNB Wealth and Investments, giving us a wrap of the markets day that was. We'll be back in the next bulletin, Sally.